Hello and welcome to Emergent. My name is Reed Summers. Pleasure to be back in the studio live with you all after a brief hiatus. Tonight we're talking about disclosure, the disclosure of the UAP and NHI phenomena, unidentified anomalous phenomena, and non-human intelligence. I thought it would be an important stopping point here as Q1 of 2025 is clearly behind us, and we are racing into this new year with, it seems, leaks and whistleblower statements and possible government and congressional action rippling forward every day. Seems to be some new headline regarding UAP. So I thought it would be an important opportunity to stop and look at the process of disclosure, the process of humanity slowly or suddenly having access to awareness regarding the larger universe in which it lives, its origins as a species, and its historic interaction in what might be called an exosystem of life, an ecosystem, but exo, out there in the universe at large, and the presence and activity and potential intent of what may end up being confirmed as a non-human intelligent origin to the UAP phenomenon and controller of the craft that we are observing in our skies and in our oceans. So this couldn't be a more important topic in my view. If confirmed to be real, this would be the biggest event in human history. This would be the greatest cover-up in modern history, if not in all history. And this would be the confirmation of a whole new layer of reality, operating reality in our world, operating under the skin of human affairs, affecting humanity in ways that we cannot yet account for, geopolitically, technologically, socially, economically, even genetically. It is possible that the presence of these craft and the potential entity controller behind them is affecting our world and our human experience of being alive as human beings in really tremendous and profound ways. So happy you're with me. I look forward to this dynamic deep dive into the disclosure topic. Also, I want this to be a conversation with you all. So I encourage you, if you're watching on YouTube, use the chat to share your thoughts throughout the show. I will get that up in front of me here. If you're watching on X, you'll have access to the first 20 minutes of the show, and then we'll move over to YouTube entirely. So you might want to make that transition right now. Today, I have up on screen some of the topics du jour that we will be focusing upon. We're going to be talking about the past and present of UFO disclosure, the tension between science discovery and UFO disclosure, or just discovery and disclosure. Might summarize it that way. We'll talk about the future of disclosure, what comes next, and then also the contents of disclosure, asking the question, what is it that will be disclosed? Because I'm sure you know that is going to change everything regarding the outcome and the implication of disclosure itself. And then last, we'll talk about disclosing the intent of the phenomenon, which in my view is the fundamental core reality that we are all striving to understand. Who, why, what, how? Who is in our world? What are they doing? Why are they here? And how are they operating in our human space? If you're new to the show, please like and subscribe, share it with others. I look forward to getting this in front of more people, especially as the public comes in contact with this confusing and enigmatic topic, which used to be relegated to the fringe, but is now being thrust into the very heart of social discourse. As people come in contact with it, I think they need resources to help engage their logic, their reason, their caution, and their skeptical thinking, to think through the phenomenon in a very grounded fashion and incrementally move towards greater and greater abilities to make conclusive statements as to those big 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, why. But there's a process to get there. We can't just leap to a conclusion on day one and assume that this is who's here in the world. This is why they're here. This is what they're doing. It's going to be a process. And I am very much all about supporting that process. In fact, that's really the bulk of my public work at this moment, is helping people think through the phenomenon, especially those who want to be forerunners into this new reality, out on the frontier of the discourse, out ahead of the discussion of UAP, into the discussion of NHI, non-human intelligence, and the direct points of contact that we are already having with this potential other form of sentient life. So that's the inspiration for Emergent. So with that, let's dive into disclosure. Disclosure is underway. Disclosure being the formal or informal release of information, whether by human institutions, government, military, even religious organizations. But I would also add via civil society and civilians, citizen disclosure. Because as you'll hear from me many times in today's show, I believe there are multiple layers of disclosure, 4 of them. And government disclosure is only one. The other being citizen disclosure, what citizens have come to know and understand. NHI disclosure, what non human intelligence can and should be disclosing and may not be, as well as exopolitical disclosure, what the larger environment of interacting life around us, that may be around us, could potentially help us to understand or alert us to. So there are layers of disclosure. And part of my invitation today is to expand out of this fixation on the daily news cycle regarding what former government employee or what current government institution or entity is saying about UAP or not saying. We are so focalized on that very narrow band of the larger signal that is actually being transmitted around this issue. There is activity of UAP and potential NHI that we can begin to detect and track on our own as a society. I'll be getting into that. Civilians have already potentially made contact. We could be discussing their experience. I'll be getting into that too. So there's a much larger band, a set of bands to this frequency. And I think disclosure as a movement needs to expand into those. So back to disclosure itself. Some would say we need disclosure. Some would say we'll never have disclosure. Others might say disclosure already happened. The information is actually already out. There is a skeleton in the closet of the governments of our world, and the bones of that skeleton are out in public view, getting bleached by the bright sunshine, right? But now comes the fleshing out of those bones to better understand the full picture of what's really going on. And I think that fleshing out is what's going to be taking place in the next few years. But before I dive into more of my thoughts on that, I want to ask you and invite you in the YouTube chat, post some of your thoughts on how you would describe the current state of UFO disclosure. Is it advancing rapidly? Is it obstructed and effectively halted? Are we at the cusp of something big, or is this yet another momentary period in time when information comes out into the public, but then the full reality is rapidly and effectively swept under the rug? What do you think? And I'm going to pull up the chat here in front of me and interact with a couple of your comments. As those come in, I'll just say, I think we have quite the bones to work with in fleshing out this bigger picture. We have statements regarding crash recoveries, reverse engineering, alien craft, non-Earth based technology, biologics, descriptions of entities. And these statements about those variables of the phenomenon are being made by former, high-ranking, highly credible individuals with first or second-hand knowledge of those details. So, I mean, never before in the past, on the record, congressionally even, have statements to these effect been made in a concerted fashion. And I think it's a very interesting and unique time we're in. We'll talk a little bit about why this is happening, because there are many reasons why disclosure shouldn't be happening from the perspective of government. It's very difficult to disclose a topic like this, and yet it is happening. So why is it happening? What are the compelling factors at play? I look forward to getting into that with you all. But to read a couple of your comments here. Kenzo, it's really frustrating. I don't have faith in the current administration, but things are moving slowly forward. They are, and I would add across administrations, they are moving slowly forward. Cool guy, I don't exactly trust this admin to handle disclosure responsibly and transparently. We'll talk a little bit later about the problems inherent to disclosure, being that this really is a narrative representation of an objective reality that will not be disclosed, right? And potentially cannot be disclosed. We assume government can disclose the nature of the entities, their motivations and intentions, their historic activities. the larger playing field of forces and how many entities are in the world and how they're competing with one another exopolitically. Can government really disclose that? Right. But the potential for narrative manipulation, for partial disclosure leading to false understanding of the phenomenon, and also competing disclosures concurrently happening by major world powers, state actors, non-state actors, is very real. We have a few other comments here. Widening the lens to include citizen, NHI, exopolitical. Yes, I think, I'm going to invite you to engage in a visioning practice with me. Not something most podcasters do, but one in which we step out of the confines of how we are seeing this event, the disclosure of UAP, and to really step back and look at what's happening at a whole species level, because something really big is underway. Disclosure is just the first act of a much larger play. What are acts 2, 3, 4, and 5? Who's thinking about that? Because act 1 most certainly fits within the whole. And last, I like that Arrow is posting videos, though, not substantial yet, but they are opening up. Yes, they are opening up the media vault. We'll have to see if that media is authentic, if it's been doctored, or of course it's been selectively released for public consumption. But yes, interestingly, I put out a poll this morning. What do you think is the avenue by which disclosure will effectively happen? Government disclosure was the first option. Almost nobody picked it. Really interesting. No one's buying stock in government disclosure. So why are we hanging out like alley cats waiting for a meal out of the back door of the big restaurant when it's not coming, potentially? There are other ways that we can effectively disclose the phenomenon. And getting into that is going to be extremely empowering, especially to those people who have had direct firsthand experience of the phenomenon, lest those people are relegated to worthless testimonial, evidential categorization. And we all look up to false authority, the false authority syndrome of, well, the government must know, the government must tell us, they'll tell us the truth. Well, none of that may be true, right? And so maybe we should listen to people who say they have had experiences. Not to say that those experiences are all inherently accurate as they've been interpreted, but there's a tremendous amount of data right there staring us in the face in the direct encounters that people have had with purported non-human intelligence. Great stuff. Thank you for posting. Keep doing so. Also, if you have questions about any of the topics I'm talking about today, we'll put a link to Slido in the chat. Click the link, add your question, upvote and downvote the questions of others, and I'll be getting to that several times in today's show. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about key questions. What is it that will be disclosed? What are the contents of disclosure? To what end? Right? To what effect in society? Because just because it's disclosed doesn't mean anyone cares or will wake up to it or will piece together these little bits of information into a coherent picture. So to what end is disclosure taking us? We'll be talking about that. As much as I am cautious about the disclosure process, I am a strong advocate for it. This is the first act in the play. If we can't get past act number 1, the play's over. We're not getting to act number 2. Disclosure is absolutely essential. I describe this as access to awareness. If humanity does not have access to awareness, then there will never be intelligent action. So, in a sense, disclosure has to capture attention. Attention comes before awareness. This really is the first question is, will the information that's been released so far, and we'll get into some of what that is, be enough to capture attention as everyone is focused on their weapon of mass distraction in the palm of their hand, as the attention economy has been thoroughly monetized and dominated by multi-billion-dollar companies? Can the disclosure, the humble new actor on the stage, David versus Goliath, can disclosure of UAP in the form of whistleblower testimony, forensic evidence potentially, photo and video, really be enough to break through the attention barrier of society at large, at least in this country? What about internationally or regionally? It's a question. And that it cannot is going to be a big problem in generating accurate awareness of the phenomenon. So we may have a breakthrough in the United States, but what is the awareness of this phenomenon in China or in Africa or in Europe? It's not going to be the same as here. And therefore, with fragmented awareness and potentially highly inaccurate interpretations of the phenomenon, how will we make a coherent whole species response to what is taking place in our world? Big problem. This is the UFO calling, folks. This is why you're needed. And this is why citizen disclosure, in my view, is the bedrock of the process. It's as simple as people talking to people about what they know. I know some things about what has happened and is happening. I'm endeavoring to tell people, but also to help them come to know it for themselves using their own human perception, their own human sensor. And I hope others can get on board to get into that game as well. So let's talk about where we are and how we got here. Many people are familiar with the events of 2017, the New York Times article that came out highlighting an individual named Lou Elizondo, former director of a Pentagon program tasked with studying UAP, along with 3 Navy videos, unconfirmed, now colloquially called the FLIR video, the Tic Tac, and the Gimbal video. And this seemed to be the eruption. There was a revolution in public awareness or access to awareness about the UAP phenomenon via this set of events. But really, this got going much earlier. Here I have on screen a tweet that I came across by John Podesta, February 13th, 2015. Finally, my biggest failure of 2014, once again, not securing the disclosure of the UFO files. Interesting choice of language. My biggest failure. Wow, that's pretty big scope to give to the UFO phenomenon right there. But as we look back through history at the statements made by state leaders, by high-ranking government officials in many different countries, it becomes very clear that UAP is regarded as a matter of the highest consequence for the national security of one's country and for world stability. And we're going to get into a little bit more of that in this show. Specifically, I'm going to be highlighting this recent interview that came out with the late Harold Malmgren on Jesse Michaels' American Alchemy show. It's a 3-hour interview. I can't say I saw all of it. My life is very busy, but I did my best to get the main takeaways. And also just many thanks to Harold, who unfortunately and tragically passed away several weeks after the filming of this interview. So this really is, you could say, in large part, his deathbed testimony. So gratitude to Harold. Thank you for your service and your lifetime of accomplishments. And in the last few weeks of your life, being able to bring forward this information so that the public has access to awareness via disclosure of this reality. We're going to be highlighting some of the statements that Harold made in this interview. And I just want to say as well, there have been many deathbed testimonials given. My family has been privy to several directly in the room. There have been many individuals who have been in the program on the front lines of humanity, or at least this government, the US government's confrontation with NHI, not humanity, the US government. But imagine globally, right? There are over 170 countries in the world. Have all of these federal institutions, or majority of them, interacted with this phenomenon? How many thousands of people within each have had direct, firsthand eyewitness access to it, right? We're talking about tens, if not hundreds of thousands of individuals who have committed part or even a large part of their life to dealing with this at some level. That it remains completely obscured, hidden, and revoked from public access is truly the greatest scandal in human history, I would say. I also have on screen here some statements by Donald Trump, October 25th last year, on the Joe Rogan Experience. Trump, when asked about the UFO issue, said a lot of interest in the people coming from space, and I know you're interested in that. Rogan responds, yes, oh, very interested in that. How much do they tell you about that? Trump, oh, a lot. So just one of, again, a number of statements made by former presidents regarding the veracity behind the phenomenon, the fact that there is a there. And here I want to touch on what Harold Malmgren brought forward regarding JFK's knowledge of the UFO phenomenon and the degree to which his knowledge of it and his attempt to act upon it might have played a part in his untimely death. I don't have a video playback to show. I encourage you to watch the interview on this section, but Harold goes on to say that JFK had knowledge of UFOs long before he became president due to his involvement in naval intelligence, due to his contact with James Forrestal, an individual who obviously had extreme access to information on this topic and who died under very strange circumstances, potentially related to it. But basically, Harold spoke to this. I have heard this elsewhere. This is not a new statement, that JFK understood the alien presence was a reality and attempted to make overtures to the United States' chief foreign adversary, the USSR, Khrushchev, the leader of the USSR, to attempt to engage on the topic, using it as a potential platform to develop a peace-building effort and a denuclearization effort. Really interesting. Now, I might interject in this potential reality that JFK was assassinated in part due to his attempt to thaw relations with the USSR. Would this topic be grounds for peace based upon a proposed collaboration with an NHI between the US and the USSR, meaning they would collaborate collectively and jointly with a visiting species, or because it presented some kind of hazard and risk to both parties and to the world itself, and that was the basis for a functional unity to take place? I lean towards the latter as a much more likely scenario. Fast forwarding 25 years, we have Ronald Reagan in front of the UN General Assembly making this statement: in our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. What was Reagan signaling there? Some years later, we have indication via Hal Puthoff that the Bush Jr. administration itself seriously considered disclosure. I'd like to play back this segment of the interview on American Alchemy, highlighting that very thing.
Now public knowledge through Hal Puthoff that George W. Bush contemplated UFO disclosure with his national security advisor, Stephen Hadley. As Pippa relayed to me, a lot of these high-level disclosure discussions revolved around one particular book, a Chinese science fiction novel called The Three-Body Problem, which became mandatory reading among many high-level national security advisors in the United States.
Interesting. I'm not sure if you watched The Three-Body Problem. I certainly did. And we'll put that up on screen here for those who haven't. That is potentially mandatory reading for those in the know in this government is fascinating. There are so many fascinating subplots to that story, as depicted at least in the film rendition last year, not least of which that it was in China that contact was initiated in the 50s, that human interests were betrayed by a foreign adversary, that these entities were engaged and allowed access against the better interests of humanity, and that the science and technology, the tip of the spear, was effectively being thwarted by a non-human extraterrestrial force. Interestingly, in the Harold Malmgren interview, he talks about his interactions with a government official. I'm drawing a blank on his exact name. I'll get to it later in the show here. That incidents such as the Bluegill triple prime nuclear test, in which a UAP was seen in the fire plume of the nuclear weapon and fell from the sky. We'll get into that actually in a minute. But that incidents like this were common, and that Department of Energy sites had been frequently observed and incursions had taken place, and that there seemed to be, and this was the quote, I just touched on it, there seemed to be a very clear interest by whatever this phenomenon is in the tip of the spear science and technology. So interesting that in the Three-Body Problem, that effectively was the core narrative. So we'll do a show on three-body problem at some point, especially when season 2 comes out. But I'll put up on screen here the main takeaways of the scenario at play, because Harold Malmgren relayed that he was told that the three-body problem, the model presented in that novel, is potentially the most accurate representation of what is taking place. There should be a slide there we can throw up. Okay. So, survival-driven colonization, preemptive control and suppression, philosophical and civilizational superiority, and strategic silence. 4 cornerstones of that model as presented in this novel, and also film rendition. Strategic silence, very interesting. People ask, well, why hasn't the phenomenon revealed itself? Maybe we're not ready. Maybe governments aren't allowing them to. Maybe it's all about us. Maybe we're in the way. Maybe we should gaslight ourselves till the nth degree, right? I would say no. Maybe we should also allow for the scenario in which they are choosing to remain silent strategically until certain events, certain times, certain vulnerabilities become manifest in the world, that when we do ever sit at the negotiating table with non-human intelligence forces, we will be in a disadvantaged position to petition for our needs to be met, and to have a commanding, deterministic set of policies regarding who and what enters our world and what they can do here. So, in the transactional model of NHI intent, which I think is a very real scenario at play, if there's a transaction being undertaken over decades, potentially many decades, even a century, wouldn't it be good to put your opposing party in a disadvantaged position so that they have to accept whatever terms are presented to you? Would make sense to me, especially given our preeminence on the earth, our adaptive ability as life forms in this complex biological planet. So I'll pause there on that, but very interesting that the three-body problem, according to Harold Malmgren, has been relayed as a very valuable model for what the phenomenon is. So back to the events that have taken place. And I will say here that we're at the 20-minute mark. So if you're watching on X, please migrate over to YouTube. We'll put a link somewhere, or go to my profile. I'm sure it's there. And please continue watching there. And I have a question for the audience. I'm going to land it now, let you start thinking about it as I begin to roll out more of the history. But what to you was the major milestone in the modern wave of disclosures regarding UFO? What, in your view, was the biggest statement, piece of information, leak, or the most important individual who's come forward to present information? What are the watershed moments in the last decade of UFO disclosure? Put that in the YouTube chat, and I'll be discussing that with you in a minute. Okay, onward. So following 2017, a rapid series of events took place. The To the Stars Academy was formed to undertake a variety of initiatives. Tom DeLonge, Lou Elizondo, Jim Semivan, and others were a part of that. And they also brokered, I believe, the release of the 3 Navy videos, which were ultimately confirmed as authentic by the Pentagon. Very important to know. In 2019, 2 years later, the Navy updated its reporting protocols, seeming to respond to the exigency of this information coming out, and their service members becoming aware of it and having been exposed to it. In 2020, there was the establishment of the UAP task force mandated by Congress to investigate claims by U.S. Navy pilots, their altercations and encounters with UAP. A lot of action in the Congress from various congressmen and congresswomen. There was also the passing of the 2020 Intelligence Authorization Act, which required the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, and the Secretary of Defense to submit a report on UAPs to Congress. This seemed to be a watershed moment in the elected side of government, demanding that the executive branch proffer information and allow Congress to enact its lawful oversight over whatever programs are underway to recover these vehicles, to reverse engineer their technologies, to potentially deploy those technologies, to commercialize them, to weaponize them. And that effort continues to this day, especially in the formerly submitted UAP Disclosure Act, which did not succeed. Well, it was passed, but it was stripped of its eminent domain and much of its teeth. And then it did not pass in greater expanded form the year later. And yet there's a lot of effort underway by other good groups to get Congress the capabilities it needs to gain insight and oversight into this. In 2021, there was a preliminary UAP report to Congress containing 144 UAP incidents that had been reported by military personnel since 2004. And the report importantly stated that most incidents remained unexplained, partly due to lack of evidence or lack of data, but requiring ongoing analysis. So again, giving credence to that there is a there. In 2022 were the first congressional hearings on UAP in the House Intelligence Subcommittee in over 50 years. And defense officials acknowledged that the increase in UAP reports was up and discussed efforts to, again, collect that data and undertake that analysis. In 2022, the UAP-TF task force morphed into a new entity called the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, tasked by the Pentagon with uncovering what is being reported by service members, analyzing that data, and presenting credible reports to Congress. What happened in the year or two since, under its initial leadership, was disappointing to say the least, laughable potentially to say more, but was what looked like another attempt, another Blue Book, Project Blue Book 2.0, an attempt to say, look, we looked, we studied it, we analyzed it. There's really nothing here. It's been resolved. Look, it's under the carpet once again. But see, it's not getting under the carpet now, right? The carpet doesn't exist. Everything that's under the carpet is coming out. Whistleblowers, former government employees who have had exposure to this are coming out in droves, it seems. And I think there is a tipping point function there where eventually, in order to gain immunity and to not be one of the secret holders, but to be one of the disclosers, that these individuals will rush to the limelight to tell the public what they know and to provide, hopefully, more than just testimonial evidence of that. So we might be in the beginning phases of that surge. We will see. I also want to mention that three other very important videos I think, did come out as well in the last couple of years. The first was called the Mosul Orb. This was a video taken by a Reaper drone near Mosul, Iraq in 2016, showing a shiny spherical orb moving at high speed over a sensitive location. Interestingly, there were statements made in Congress by acting defense officials to the effect that these orbs have been seen around the world and in high volume. Very interesting. So that video seemed to allow or give cover for a statement to be made. Is this how disclosure happens? A small leak, societal discourse, societal demand, official statement, not of disclosure, but of confirmation. And I think this is a more likely scenario as to what is going to take place. Disclosure will happen outside the government, but confirmation will take place by the government. This, I think, is what to expect in the next several years, if anything. The second video was what is known as the jellyfish UFO. These have reportedly been seen all around the world, in Russia, in Europe, and in military zones. I have on a good source information that says that these are a very authentic anomalous vehicle of non-human origin, and that they are engaged in some kind of collection maneuver. So hopefully we have more information about these reported jellyfish-shaped structured craft. And then the last was the Aguadilla case out of Puerto Rico at the airport in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico in 2013, of this object being tracked, radar tracked, splitting into multiple objects, engaging transmedium into the water and out of the water. Very interesting case. I think these three videos really almost set the stage and whetted the appetite for better ability to detect and track UAP with calibrated instruments, with sound data collection methods, and in ways that researchers in society and in university settings can access and undertake real research and analysis upon. And this, I think we're going to get into, is a very powerful form of societal disclosure that can be taking place now and is in fact already underway. So it's very encouraging. Okay, so just to bring us up to the present fully, for me, one of the watershed moments in this whole disclosure process in recent times was the 2023 hearings in Congress, which featured the testimony of David Grush, David Frazier, and Ryan Graves, which I found highly credible, highly compelling, and really set the stage for what happened in the next year and a half, which was considerable. There seemed to be a conflagration, a flurry and a scurry to get information out in 2024, which not incidentally was an election year. There was a scheduled hearing before the election. Interestingly, it was postponed to be right after the election. I didn't find that to be a coincidence. The Immaculate Constellation program was leaked, I believe, several weeks before those hearings, and then the documentation of it was then presented in Congress by Michael Schellenberger. Interestingly, and only recently on the Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell, Matthew Brown, the individual I believe who Michael Schellenberger was engaging with to access those Immaculate Constellation documents, stepped forward to tell his story. So that is now rippled out. We had the drone crisis sweep the northeast of the United States, the nuclear armed bases in the Air Force bases in the United Kingdom, in Germany, and then West Coast, all around the world. These anomalous craft, of course, a large portion, I'm sure, were multiple people reporting the same thing. They were misidentification of prosaic craft, misinterpretation of size and distance. But I think, and I do believe that inside that flap, you could call it, that craze of activity of these anomalous, of these unidentified craft, I should say, were authentic, unidentified anomalous vehicles. And I've talked to researchers, field researchers who were on the scene in multiple locations who captured highly credible footage of this, which is quite eye-opening and I think really needs to be scrutinized further. I found it very odd how this all came together, converged right at the end of last year into early this year, with the new administration taking office, the trade war kicking off between the US and China, all of these geopolitical events. And here was this attempt, seemingly, to make a public display. What other reason would there be to put up advanced aerial vehicles all over US cities, right at rush hour, allowing thousands of phone videos to capture information, to share that on social media? To me, this looked like a show of presence or some act of a psychological operation. Now, before we rush to say, oh yeah, it was the government, I would press you to think, how did that whole situation help the US government or either administration, incoming or outgoing? It seemed to be highly inconvenient to elected government. How would it have helped the defense industry, even if that's where these craft originated, to put up their most advanced aerial vehicles essentially in broad daylight and allow everyone with an iPhone to film them? How does it serve their interest? Now, here's a question I will ask, and I'll ask again and again going forward, inspired by my episode 2 episodes ago with Joshua Pearson, a career intelligence officer in the Army and a doctor of strategic studies. Who benefits from this perception? Ask yourself that. This craze of activity in our skies, who benefits? Does the government benefit? Does the defense industry benefit? Even a foreign adversary, would they benefit from what almost could start a kinetic war by launching craft all over the urban centers of their foreign adversary? Think about it. It is also possible, I do believe, that NHI could potentially be engineering some kind of psychological operation to discourage people from believing that the government can disclose, because, of course, both administrations made highly non-credible statements about the drone crisis, looked truly terrible in the public eye. It degraded faith in institutions below what it even was. Who benefits from that? It is possible, I would say, that a non-human intelligence actor or force might have been attempting to make a display for some purpose. Okay. And so much more. I mean, we had articles come out by Liberation Times basically outing some of the CIA agencies that had facilitated some tech transfers. We had the Kona Blue program come out into the public more fully. All of this happened in 2024, seemed to be a watershed year, kicked off really by the events of 2023. So, with that, I'm going to go over to YouTube and look at your comments. What do you view as the defining moment in the modern disclosure process? That's my question to you. Oh boy, we got a lot of comments here. Let's see if I can climb through some of them. Okay. Let me figure out how to scroll this thing. There we go. I can scroll a web page. I'm not that old. Okay. Big trouble. The biggest watershed was being a contactee and recognizing my soul's sovereignty and value. Okay. So maybe the biggest watershed experience was your own as a direct experiencer of the phenomenon. Here to that. Blue skies. In an age of grifters, it will take more than the words of whistleblowers, I feel. You know, I'm of a similar opinion. There was a time when I thought high-ranking former government officials coming out saying this is what's happening, going all the way to alien craft and biologics was enough. And now I don't think so. I think something has to happen outside government, out in the citizen science, civilian space, the UAP field research and detection space to trigger some event that government can respond to versus initiate itself. My next topic to get into is why disclosure hasn't happened. And there is a laundry list of reasons why government, on its own footing, on its own premise for existence, shouldn't disclose this. Whether it's national security, whether it's tech supremacy, whether it's public safety, it just goes on and on. And so why is it happening? Well, it seems to be. But I think things have to happen outside government. We have to expand out of this US defense aerospace framing of the disclosure movement and go international, go societal, and even go non-secular. I mean, it's possible that there are religious or institutions who could affect disclosure of some kind. And you know who I'm talking about right there when I say that. There are hyper powerful, non-state sovereign actors in the world who possess potential evidence that this phenomenon is real. Okay, let's see here. If I think there are hushed rumors flying behind the scenes once senators are writing 60-page bills. Yes, to see a 60-page bill like the UAPDA come out, you have to know how many conversations have happened, how confident the minority or majority leader of the Senate must feel to put a bill on the floor to this effect. They have been exposed to information confirming the reality of this phenomenon. You can take that to the bank. Just one undeniable satellite video, one clear HD video with provenance showing a saucer zipping in a figure eight and flying off. The whole world would explode. You know, I also would have thought so too, and now I'm not so sure. I'm pretty sure AI is the death knell to the archetypal UFO video or photo. In an upcoming micro episode, which I've already recorded but haven't released, I use Sora AI to generate a UFO drone video with 4 prompts, 4 progressively more specific prompts, and it generates something that would have convinced me 5-10 years ago, and certainly would rush around social media and convince a lot of people, but then can be debunked, right? That's the thing, is you wake up a lot of people and then you debunk the thing that was used to wake them up and they go back asleep and they are more resistant to waking up in the future. Okay, so there are tools out there even in the civilian space, let alone the federal space, that can effectively undermine any sort of media presentation as demonstrative evidence of UFO. Not to say it's not important, and I think there are, the word was used, video with provenance, right? So chain of custody, proving what equipment was used in its capture, multi-sensor, multimodal detection. So looking at it not just in visible light, but thermal and other wavelengths of light, and other ways to detect physicality, radar, for example. And I think there are going to be efforts underway toward the end of this year to bring all of the technology platforms together that are already out there, all the startups, the university programs that are trying to detect and track UAP into one room to get them to talk about how they can synergize and basically present undeniable proof that a craft of X size, X mass, moved at X speed and accelerated at X G force, okay, and present that to the public. So that is very possible. Let's see. Let's move through another couple comments here. The quote from Carl, former Colonel Carl Nell, was shared. We'd have to assume all life in the universe operates on conservation of energy laws, eaten or but be eaten until they reach a state of post-scarcity. Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the topic of intent and what might motivate a non-human intelligence to undertake a programmatic engagement with humanity and interact in the ways that they may have done. We have so many indications and forms of testimonial evidence pointing to a long-standing, close point of contact. And so, what might compel that? Could it be something as simple, so obvious that we would never even think that that could be the reason? And it's a single word. Can you guess? Planet. Do you think what's the highest value item in this little patch of dark matter, or of spatial existence, of time space, in this little corner of the Milky Way? What is the highest value item? Is it you and me? Is it society? Is it our newfangled technologies as a species? Could it be something so simple as the planet itself? It's a pretty valuable object. And look what happened to it in the 20th century. Interesting. Is that a coincidence? That just as we begin to destroy the planet, its habitability long term, guess who shows up? I think there definitely could be a correlation there. Okay, let's keep rolling here. So let's talk about why not disclosure, because there's a lot of reasons that have been described for why not. Well, national security is, of course, one. You don't want to admit to your own tax-paying citizens that you are encountering another force with which you have no technological parity in terms of the ability to protect or project force. The risk of technological surprise, that UAP could effectively do anything at any time in this world to great effect and to destructive effect too, and there's nothing we could do about it. That's quite a problematic thing to release to the public, to public awareness. I think also that there is a long-standing Cold War over technologies related to this phenomenon that has been running for decades, since the last Great War, World War II, and that to disclose the existence of this phenomenon would also disclose potentially, or lead to the disclosure of everything you have recovered from it, reverse engineered from it, that is now inside of your core systems of defense and offense, or your technological systems that run your economy and your banking system. I mean, we don't know the degree to which technologies of non-Earth origin have penetrated, of non-human origin, I should say, have penetrated our human space. So to reveal the phenomenon is to potentially reveal that extent, which could, I guess, render one's country highly vulnerable to its adversaries. Governments don't really reveal secrets. They aggregate them, they manage them, they seek to gain opportunity from them, hopefully in the public good. But I'm sure there are a lot of side games and side deals being made for private good. There's also the potential that the phenomenon itself is high risk, possibly threat, and that to reveal that all of a sudden, and especially at a time when there is no viable means of defense or viable way to obstruct the activity of the phenomenon, would lead to mass hysteria or breakdown of social order. There's the possibility that deals have been made, potentially even with NHI. This has been spoken to, the topic of covert agreement. And to reveal the phenomenon starts to unravel those agreements, which might contain within them certain crimes, unlawful activity, even crimes against humanity. That's one reason not to disclose. And then last, there is the potential that there is a long-standing cold or hot fight at play, either between human actors or between them and non-human actors. Something of a kinetic engagement with NHI. And here I want to touch upon another revelation from the Harold Malmgren interview. Harold claimed to have been witness to a UFO falling out of the fiery plume of the nuclear test that took place in the Johnston Atoll in the Pacific, called the Bluegill Triple Prime test. He claims to have been exposed personally to the wreckage, some of the wreckage or material that was recovered that fell into the ocean and that was rapidly scooped up by naval vessels at Los Alamos, I believe. He was invited to handle it. Interesting, isn't it? I believe what he said is, as he handled it, the color was that of space itself. We're left to wonder what that color might be. Maybe black, maybe translucent, and that there was no tactile feel as he held it. He couldn't feel it in his hand the way we would normally feel a solid object. And that also the object seemed to communicate into his mind, to potentially transmit information into his mind. And I believe in the interview it was suggested that it was actually to test that interaction that he was introduced to the material and asked to handle it. The consciousness connection between humans and craft, and humans and even this material, is well established in the UFO record. And that's topic for other episode. But I would say it's safe to say that whatever is controlling these vehicles is using not just hand controls, buttons, and switches, but the powers of mind to project force in the physical and to engage with objects in the physical. And that those objects are designed to engage in the mental or in the psychic. There is truly a psionic engagement that seems evident between craft and controller. And, we're already aware of our own abilities psionically as humans, human to human, extrasensory perception, communication that is taking place outside any of the physical aperture that we contain, our voice, sight, smell, hearing, and or even quantum entanglement, the entanglement of subatomic particles across space and time. So, we're becoming aware that this is possible. Is it no wonder that they have mastered such techniques and technologies, and that mind and body, physical and non-physical or immaterial, are a continuum of the same spectrum of reality itself, and that they have devised technologies to interface with it. Many view this as evidence of an interdimensional origin to the phenomenon. I think also just as plausible is that they're very much in our dimension. They're just engaging in other dimensional spaces as physical entities. Doesn't that happen between us? Look through the human record, look through your experience. Are you purely flesh, bone, brain? Are you five senses only, or is something else taking place in your consciousness? But you're still a physical entity. I think they may be so as well. So I digress a bit there. But so there are many reasons for non-disclosure. Let's talk about why then. Why is disclosure happening? I put out a poll this morning. We can put that up on screen regarding this topic of controlled disclosure. That is a phrase that was, I believe, introduced in the UAP Disclosure Act. It was presented at the first Seoul Symposium in 2023. And here's my question. Very interesting response among not a whole lot of takers to the question, but still interesting. I'm sorry, it's the other poll. There's two of them. There we go. What is the most likely motivation for controlled disclosure of UAP NHI since 2017? It was the other poll that has the interesting result. This one made more sense. For an adversary, meaning China's going to disclose before us, or China's winning the tech arms race, or Russia has procured a direct energy weapon from NHI and could use it upon us. So therefore, we have to disclose this to gain an upper edge. Okay. Second, the cover-up itself is just collapsing under its own weight. It's become too sprawling, too it has lost its immaculate status and is falling to the earth under its own weight. The next is that there is some dark or difficult truth underneath the phenomenon that is preventing its disclosure, some kind of threat or threat of retaliation, which has been spoken to by multiple whistleblowers in recent times, or that this is just the activity of a few good men, nothing more. There's no concerted or coordinated effort or orchestration. Needless to say, I don't think the last option is all that plausible at this point. I think there are strong indications that something is impelling this into the public from deep within the state that has managed and operated it for a very long time. You might call that the deep state, or that there are breakaway elements or factions from the deep state that have come in contact with a fuller picture of the phenomenon itself and are alarmed and know that in order to effectively maintain order and control of institutions, that this has to be brought into public knowledge for some reason. That has also been said by multiple eyewitness and whistleblowers in recent times, that there are difficult, hard truths at the core of this. And I have a sneaky suspicion that there has been an information war at play for a very long time on this issue. Now, certain actors who have managed this effectively, in this country at least, have been winning that war. They have been effectively managing public perception, keeping people slightly aware, slightly open to the possibility, just so that they are ontologically prepared, right, in case something bursts out. But fat, dumb, and happy. Go to work, pay your taxes, bye, right? Don't become aware that we're being visited by a non-human intelligence. Don't become aware that we're a part of an exopolitical reality of interaction and that there's actually a competing set of forces that are actually in conflict potentially in our world. Don't become aware. I have a sense that the information war has changed and they are losing the war. And that's part of why this is coming out now, is that without public awareness on this issue, people will be effectively misled and manipulated, not just on this issue, but on other issues. And that there is some kind of attempt to undermine the legitimacy and institutional control of Western democratic governments over their populations, to split their populations, to fragment society itself, and to weaken the Western liberal order on the global stage. And it is my sense that this is connected to the UAP topic. And I look forward to getting into this more deeply, especially as evidence comes out regarding it, because I have strong signals that that evidence is there. Not least of which is this interview with Harold Malmgren. He is talking about JFK making a special trip to go look at the wreckage of this UAP craft that fell out of that nuclear plume. He's been aware of it for a very long time, such that he's making overtures against the will of the CIA and trying to shake hands across the aisle with his chiefest adversary in the world, saying that this is a platform for potential peace. That just gives you a sense of the scale of this issue behind the scenes. It is monumental, and there are so many signals of that. I think of the records that George Knapp brought out of the USSR itself during the thawing of relations, and of tens of thousands of reports collected by the Russian military. The Russian military basically highly alarmed by the altercations with UAP, that there have been numerous mid-air altercations, kinetic fights between USSR craft and UAP, that there have been incidents of UAP not only intervening in nuclear armed facilities, but actually setting nuclear ICBMs into launch sequence that could not be stopped, right? This is highly alarming activity. And we have no idea how deep this has gone and how much it is under the skin of everything that's happening in our world. And when you talk about the fight for tech supremacy, when you look at the fight for resources in the world and the attempt to claim the resources of third world countries and basically set up the scenario by which the world could splinter into a multipolar world where China and Russia don't rely on the West for commerce because they have enough of an economic base and a supply chain from resource-rich poor countries to sustain themselves without relations with the West. I see these trends at play. I see AI revolutionizing the world with no oversight. I see big data and the collection and surveillance of citizens and the deployment of technologies to effectively surveil populations, whole populations, and biometrically monitor them, right? This is happening, folks. And to say that it's all just us doing us, it's human on human, it's just greedy humans, evil humans, sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists in power doing what they do, I wouldn't assume that at this point. I think it's actually a responsible assumption to make that NHI is not just an entity, but a force or a set of forces. I think it's a responsible assumption to make that they are not necessarily one force, but multiple and in competition with each other. And that they are endeavoring to take some kind of stake or interest in the outcome of humanity, our developmental track, and are likely trying to adjust or alter that track, either incrementally or dramatically. And that could be happening at many levels: technology, consciousness, genetics, and so forth. This is the sobriety that we need to bring to this topic, because this is its true scale and scope. And that is what disclosures like those coming via Harold Malmgren are bringing to us. And with that, I would like to share another video. This is the third video I have in the slot here, which really highlights the potential degree to which our interaction with NHI has brought certain technologies into play.
The craft that have been recovered are not of this earth. They're not made by humans.
Oh, it's actually the other video. But we can watch that one too.
Did Richard Bissell know what was going on all along? That the bluegill test was actually always intended to be a directed energy.
Oh, we lost the playback there. We'll try that again in a second. While we're bringing that back up, it is worth highlighting some of the recent statements that have been made in the last 6 months. We have Jay Stratton, former program manager, and I believe director of the UAP task force, saying on air in a forthcoming documentary called The Age of Disclosure, quote, "I have seen with my own eyes non-human craft and non-human beings." The video I was just about to play highlights that exact same topic. Let's try to give that a playback.
Did Richard Bissell know what was going on all along? That the bluegill...
Not playing. Okay. Well, that's okay. But let me summarize it for you. So that nuclear test was apparently not just a nuclear test. It was the attempt to generate an energetic force sufficient to down a UAP craft. It was a form of direct energy weapon, that it was connected to the Star Wars program, I believe initiated by Reagan. We highlighted a quote from him earlier, that was purposed to put these direct energy weapons in space to shoot down intercontinental ballistic missiles fired by a foreign adversary, but potentially dual purposed to shoot down UAP. Harold Malmgren says, I believe off camera, but it is reported by Jesse Michaels that he, I believe, viewed an interview with an extraterrestrial biological entity, the sole surviving entity of the 1947 Roswell crash, and that this entity was the entity that gave key information or indication or impetus toward the creation of these direct energy weapons. And at the end of the clip there, Jesse Michaels asked the very apropos question, what are we dealing with here? Are we in the midst of an NHI proxy war? Okay. There are, in the historical record, instances of UAP dogfights, UAP on UAP. Are we in the midst of a larger exopolitical drama unfolding that is specific to our world, and that I don't think it's just passing by and we're just in the middle of a busy highway? We are a locus of concern and interest. But are there multiple competing groups of entities contesting their presence and vying for either a position or a physical, the ability to build a physical establishment in the oceans, on the moon, on the earth, to engage in direct negotiations with the power centers of the world, which seem to be a focus. It is worth asking these questions at this point. In fact, I think it is responsible to do so. We can play that other video because I said we would. Let's give that a
The
roll.
craft that have been recovered are not of this earth. They're not made by human hands. They are not from this planet. They are not human. They are an alien technology, whatever the word alien means. Are they extraterrestrial? We don't know. We don't know. What motives do they have? Well, we need anthropologists and social psychologists and philosophers to figure that out because they haven't communicated that to us. You know?
Sorry, I should have introduced that video. That is Eric Davis, a physicist, a scientist, formerly on the program last week, I believe, in a congressional hearing hosted by the UAP Disclosure Fund. Basically, I don't know if that was a hot mic and that's why the audio is so bad, or if he intended to make those statements, but this is an individual formerly in the program, confirmed to have been so, saying that these technologies are alien. They are non-human. They are non-Earth origin in nature. Again, the statements keep coming. So I want to ask you at this point, here we stand, 2025. It's been a ruckus year, 2 years, I should say, for the disclosure, the process of disclosure, the ability for the public to become aware of this phenomenon and to inch in the direction of intelligent action regarding this phenomenon as a society. So I want to ask you, how would you gauge this current atmosphere of UFO disclosure? Is it hospitable? Is the political, social climate hospitable to this topic? Is it antagonistic? Do you see this expanding or blowing out of its confines in the next 12, 24 months? Or do you see this going back under the carpet as it has done so many times? Put those thoughts in the YouTube chat and I'll be interacting with what you have to share there. A comment here. It is the most responsible insight to see and not deny that NHI are here and manipulating, influencing, and persuading many human beings in power to divide humanity and to expedite humanity's loss. I would say that is a possibility. I would say that, if they are taking up a stake in our world and in our species development, it is highly unlikely their intent for us matches with perfect synchronicity our intent for ourselves. We will have to negotiate intents. And the differential, it could be slight, but in all likelihood, it is not slight. I doubt they think like us. I doubt they value what we value. And there's a possibility they don't think as highly of us as we do even of ourselves, right? So the differential could be as great as a gulf. And so what that's going to generate is tremendous hazard and risk on the human side of the coin. Even if a potential NHI were undertaking a beneficial intervention, trying to help us in some fashion, how would an extraterrestrial force, presumably at a long distance from their base of operations, presumably expending a lot of energy to be here and to engage, how would they effectively alter the outcome positively for 7 billion people, 192 countries, 60 plus military alliances, 90 plus hot wars already underway? How would they interject themselves to fix this? Right? How would they fix the climate crisis? They want to give us 0 point energy. Who becomes rich and famous off that? Which country aggregates that technology and deploys it first at the disadvantageous outcome to their competitors, right? Is there a conflict around that? Is there a war over that, right? So think about it. How would NHI benevolently assist humanity via an intervention into our affairs? It's hard to imagine that taking place. I also would say in just basic wisdom regarding how intelligent life forms, you, me, everyone around us, increases our strength and resilience and capacity, is that there is a sovereign process that has to be engaged, autonomous and sovereign. So I think indigenous human solutions are already there to solve our planetary crises. Do we need extraterrestrial technology to do it? Is somebody driving us to the point of such desperation where the answer to that question would be yes? We would need extraterrestrial technology to do it. And I will ask the question again, who benefits from that outcome? It's time to be thinking in these ways. A few other comments. Let's see here. Watching this video and I'm saying, we don't know. That doesn't quite make sense to me. Okay, another comment. I love Travis Walton's account of them putting him under anesthesia, wincing at him screaming like he's a wounded animal, not maliciously, just annoyed that he got zapped. You know, there is a lot of indifference that seems to be expressed by these entities in the reported encounters people have had. It may not be a thing of malevolence. Indifference could be just as dangerous as hostility. I mean, a toddler walking down a trail, stomping an anthill just because, I don't know, just because, is just as bad to those ants as someone setting out to wipe out that anthill, right? So indifference brings tremendous hazard into our human world as well. And that we are not engaging our caution and responsible analytical thinking on this topic to seriously consider the possibility that NHI and their presence in the world is one that will divide, that will cause conflict, and that is introducing either passively or actively technologies that will alter the human landscape irrevocably. Just that alone. That's a massive risk we have to suss out as a global society. And I think we need to be thinking in those terms. I really do. Okay, we're just over the 1 hour mark. And believe it or not, I have a lot more to share. I have a sip of tea here. It's amazing what ginseng, green tea, and honey would do. Keeps you going. Okay, I have another poll I want to put up on screen. I put this out this morning. If we can share that. This was the one that was surprising. Okay. How will the truth about UAPs and non-human intelligence finally come out? Will it be official disclosure, science and research? And I should say UAP science and research. I should have clarified that, as well as field research. Citizens, grassroots, or something else. Interestingly, no one is buying stock in the government. So again, why are we waiting? Why are we banging on the hard iron door of the Pentagon, asking for scraps still? They're not giving them, despite Arrow releasing videos and photos from the 1960s of shaky saucer-like craft coming out of prototype projects of, hovering craft from various aerospace companies. Okay, that's not very helpful, right? So why are we waiting there? Science and research came in low, and I know why. It hardly scintillates and is evocative as to the power of disclosure especially at its current clip and with its current focus. Third up, and I'm happy to see it, citizen and grassroots efforts for disclosure. Look forward to getting into what those might be. And then something else. Wow, what's something else, right? I didn't quite get a coherent picture from the commenting audience on what that something else is. I think that also includes despondency, that nothing will, because I think some of those folks voted that way on option 4. But here, this is a segue to a process I want to do with you. I believe, no, I don't have that slide in, but it doesn't matter. It's just an image of the Earth. I want you to just sit back in your chair and you can close your eyes or you can just stop looking at me, look at the wall, and just imagine yourself expanding out beyond the confines of where you are right now, your individual life and concerns. There's the Earth. And expand upward and outward beyond this beautiful planet that we call home. Position yourself high up so you can take a greater vantage point. We're going to elevate beyond so that we can more intelligently get back in. And look down upon that world at night, those urban centers, those lights, humanity buzzing with activity, and see the process of disclosure. It's not just information, whistleblowers, leaks, government malfeasance, criminality, waste, fraud, and abuse. It's not just that. There's a much bigger process at work for our species. What seems to be so very big, the statement by one person, the activities of one administration, is in a sense so very small. There are layers upon layers outward from whatever we think we're attempting to do now regarding this phenomenon to the larger event taking place for our species, which is access to awareness of what we are and what we are a part of, and what is out there that has come here, and for what reasons. We are, in a sense, a highway species, potentially, right? A roadside entity connected to a whole highway system of movement and interaction, possible commerce, travel, economic affairs. And we don't know it. We ontologically cannot even conceive of ourselves as a part of that. We are instead a part of a universe in which we are alone, we are special, we are God's chosen and only, or we are just a biological anomaly, when we are increasingly coming to understand that that is not the case. So we need to expand into an exosystemic thinking and see disclosure as just one more step in a larger process. It's quite a planet and it's quite a process. Like, how does a species do this? How do they go from isolation thinking, island life, to continental life, interaction with a larger network of entities with a variety of intents? And how does it maintain its fundamental core value, sovereignty, ability to enact its divinely given purpose, its personal project as a species? How do we maintain that in this larger, agora of interactions? Because I don't think we can assume that it'll be maintained for us. And so this is where expanding to this higher vantage point is very healthy, I think. It gets us out of the news cycle, out of this tussle with a government and its institutions, to see that there's a larger process of humanity waking up. How it wakes up, whether it wakes up, and if it maintains possession of itself through the waking process and into participation with whatever's out there, is really the fundamental matter at hand. So this is why, with this perspective, I really say that there are 4 levels of disclosure, or this awareness building process. There is citizen disclosure at the bottom, which is really people saying what they have experienced and what they have come to know. This is disclosure. I have effectively disclosed the phenomenon to hundreds of people. What if there were thousands of me and you, 10,000, 100,000? Humanity would effectively disclose this to itself. It might take a long time and too long. So of course we do need bigger institutional action. But if citizens are not in a position to speak and be heard, what is the government going to do? Right? There's already so much distrust of the government that we can't just rely on that one source. Up from that is institutional disclosure, whether that's civil society, government, military, religious institutions. The institutions need to be a part of this, and if only to confirm, not disclose. And this is where I think there's powerful potential right now to get this discourse moving in the public. That's why I'm sitting in front of a camera right now, talking to people, always talking to people, is if society can get the discourse moving on its own volition, then institutions don't have to be the forcing function for disclosure. They can be the confirming function. And that confirmation is powerful if the discourse is already underway. 3rd level, NHI disclosure. They have a will. They're in the race too, by the way. They're an actor on the stage. So where is their disclosure? What is it about this possible strategic silence? How should we view that? Are there ways to compel their disclosure, possibly to force it to happen? I think direct field research into physical non-consensual encounters is one potential way that we can force the disclosure of NHI. Not via a government and not necessarily even via the experiencer themselves. And then last is exopolitical disclosure. If we are encountering multiple competing species or sets of species who are interacting, intervening, weaving themselves into the human fabric, affecting our technology, our governance, our balance of power in the world, would there potentially be an exopolitical actor who would see that happening and attempt to communicate information or to alert us to some key information? I think that is a potential. This is the broader palette that we need to be painting with as we undertake this effort to give access to awareness to humanity. I want to touch on what I see as a tension in all of this between discovery and disclosure. There seems to be a discovery community, which is to say we need to study scientifically UAP. We need to gather data and using the scientific method, incrementally establish fact that can be replicated, corroborated, etc. Out even beyond that on this spectrum is the general overall science community that is attempting other forms of discovery, whether it's discovering microbial life on other planets in our solar system, whether it's scanning for radio transmissions from intelligent civilizations, millions of years old, granted, but communication nonetheless. Okay, so they're out even beyond the UAP discovery community. On the other side of the fence is the disclosure community. Okay, now there are some people in the disclosure community who are trying to disclose the nature of existence, give us access to consciousness, oneness, and creation. That this is the adventure in consciousness crowd, but they are in the UAP space, and UAP to them means access to all of it. It's like a bonanza at the level of our access to the universe itself. Okay, I don't want to say that's not the case, but then in from that are those who are banging the door of the government. There are those banging the door of the defense industry, okay, who are not the government. And then there's a very, very few of us, I'm one of them, who's banging on the door of the NHI. Now, I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong in all this. I'm saying it's a spectrum of response to get to the core, the kernel at the heart of all this. And if all of these various actors are convergent to the core, I think there's a powerful synergy there. If they are divergent from the core, meaning we're looking for microbes on Mars when there's literally craft hovering above our cities or entities in our bedrooms at night. Okay. If we're just unable to deal with that and want to focus on the much more comfortable arm's length reality of alien life, that is divergent from the core of what is happening. Likewise, on the UAP disclosure side, if this is about breaking down the paradigm and tearing down world religions, then human control systems and expanding into conscious awakening about the universe itself, that is also divergent from the core of this. Because I would argue the core of this is its urgent situational exigency. It is physically here, it is physically interacting, it is communicating, and it is involving itself in our world. And through all of that, it is affecting the lives of real people in very real ways. I am hardly the first or the only to talk about individuals harmed by interaction with UAP, okay, and potential NHI. That, to my knowledge, is a reality. So if people are being harmed, if lives are being changed, if minds are being broken, if societal perception, even of itself and of human institutions, is being potentially altered, that is the urgent situational exigency that should drive the movement. And this is where I would love to see the discovery and the disclosure sides of the UAP community converge upon that. And as I go forward on the show and in my other work, I'll be talking a lot about what that convergence could look like. That is the singularity that this movement needs to have in view and in hand. We need to uncover who is behind the wheel, why they're likely here, what they're likely trying to do or achieve, and the effect, the impact it's having on real human lives, real human interests. If we can unite around that, we have what we need to uncover the nature of the phenomenon. I firmly believe that. I really do. And I think if we activate all assets, governments and non-governmental institutions, they'll work. They'll work with us. They'll play their part. They will confirm the existence of non-human intelligence. But if the public and the science crowd and the UFO community itself are diverging at all times, what are institutions going to do? They cannot bring people in line globally and across society. That's not what governments do, right? So the institution of humanity has to become fully activated. And there are so many assets already at hand. And at the end of the show, I'm going to rattle some off, because if you're feeling hopeless or lost in all this, there is, in fact, so much that can be done. My course that begins next week on decoding NHI intent is one example of that. With existing evidence, with looking for existing patterns and trends in that evidence, we can begin to bound the possible explanations for the phenomenon, its motivation and intent, into a small set of probable explanations. Why do that? Why care? Because once you know that it's one of three things, you can commit your limited energy to go find out which of those it is. If you think it could be one of 100 things or 1,000, or you know what, the universe is limitless, then no actual advancements will be made in understanding that urgent situational exigency that is facing us. I also now want to talk about the what and the why of disclosure. We all want the truth. We all want institutions to be transparent. We all want to know. And so we bang that drum. But I don't hear many people asking the question of, well, what is it that will be disclosed? What are the contents of the communication? What is actually behind this cover-up? If it's benign, small in scale, U.S. only, okay, it's a controversy of an American drama, right? Or a nice story for Netflix, 10-part series. If this is global, pervasive, if it is high risk, high hazard, if it has had a major hand in shaping world events, that's a big tamale to bring out into the public. It's worth understanding or beginning or attempting to understand the what, because that helps us understand the why. If the what is that disclosure is there is a hard reality, and disclosing it is tremendously difficult, that helps explain why it's being done, but also, more apropos, why it has not been done. And here I will throw up that other poll that I put out this morning about controlled disclosure. And I ask this not because I am feeling the need to question the motives of those who have come forward, the whistleblowers, former government officials, but simply to better understand what is it that makes this so hard. Oh, I'm sorry, I already did put this up. And I think it's worth getting our minds churning on this. The extent of this cover-up suggests that this event is either highly powerful, highly profitable, or highly dangerous to human interests, to national interests, to personal interests. That's worth knowing. This has been brought out numerous times in recent interviews. I know there was an interview with Lou Elizondo on, again, Jesse Michaels' very good show, where Lou, at the very end, you should watch it, the last few minutes, hard things are going to have to come out that have been done and that have happened to people as it relates to UAP. I don't think he's just talking about retaliation, institutional retaliation to whistleblowers or lost careers. I think there are some hard aspects to the actual phenomenon. And so what are those? Is there a risk of NHI retaliation? Jason Sands, another former Air Force operator, came out talking about how defense contractors, this is his claim, have been threatened by NHI if they do not give their tech back, the objects that they have recovered in these crash recoveries. Okay. Ross Coulthard on his show numerous times now has come forward saying he has been told by highly credible sources that there are attempts to use high pulse microwave weapons to bring down UAP. Now, is that just evil humans who want to greedily, go grab the technology? I doubt it, folks. I really do. I don't think at this stage in the game, it is really just we are bad, they are good. We are greedy. They're just flying around the skies whimsically and for no real reason. No, there is a competing set of interests at play, and some of those interests are non-human. Is that connected to the takedown, to the shoot down? Interestingly, Harold Malmgren, that bluegill triple prime test was a takedown, according to what he said. Okay, we're going back to the 60s now. We're talking 60 years of kinetic fight between governments and military organizations and these craft. We have to understand why that has taken place. And we have to give some grace to our own institutions, our service members, those who are serving the public good or attempting to do so, that they may have been doing so in some effort at strategic defense, that is offense for defense in some respect. We have to give that, we have to allow for that to even be a possibility, not just paint this as, as is often painted, that human governments are in the act of hostilely engaging NHI, peaceful, peace-loving NHI, that they are basically, taking over our first encounters with non-human intelligence for aggressive or profiteering or weaponizing aims. It may not be that. That really may be a false representation of what has taken place. Let me see where I am here. I have another few things I want to share. At this point, I want to ask you, if you have questions, put them in Slido. I don't see any questions in the queue yet. We'll get that link shared. I think I can actually do that on my own. I can be sovereign and autonomous in this very moment. Put that right in the YouTube chat for you all. Do you have any questions about disclosure, citizen, government, NHI, exopolitical, the process as it has happened, where we stand today, or the future of disclosure? Put your comments in the chat. So just to summarize the what and the why of disclosure, I think it's very important to be cognizant of the entire phenomenon as it's been recorded in modern history. There are military incursions that have taken place, altercations with craft in flight. Individuals have been put in harm's way by the activity of UAP. There are so many cases, I don't have time to rattle them off, but they're out there. There is, to my knowledge, an active program to engage people physically, non-consensually, what is colloquially called abductions. There's so much testimonial evidence out there of this phenomenon. We would be remiss to neglect and relegate it to the dustbin of research and analysis. We must pay attention to what people are saying has happened to them. It's actually, for those who are in I would say a law enforcement or a public protector position, it is their duty to do so. People are saying that under conscious recollection, not hypnosis, not in a dream state, that they were engaged physically by an entity in their bedroom and that they have physical biological effects from it. You have to go figure out what that is. Public safety. Okay. So that's also an aspect of the phenomenon. Have deals been made? There's definite hearsay as to various engagements that have taken place with NHI. Have technologies been given, or have they been transacted for? And what was the transaction? What was given in exchange? We have to ask that question. This is all the what of disclosure. And I don't doubt that this is why disclosure has been so difficult and so tentatively engaged by so many, at least US government administrations. But I don't doubt that the other big countries of the world have been sitting on these secrets, have contemplated bringing them forward for the public good, but in full acknowledgement of the absolute challenge of doing so successfully. But here we are, and this is why, I think citizen activists are needed in the UAP space. That's one thing that's needed, but also I think citizen scientists are needed. I think there is a real opportunity right now to engage in UAP detection and tracking. There are startups and research coalitions already formed, already developing the technologies to effectively detect and track these craft and to demonstrate their existence to the public. I've got their names right here. I've been interviewing them. The Seeker organization was my last episode. Nightcrawler, two gentlemen in an RV roving around with a massively complex sensor and video capture kit, basically tracking these craft themselves and making the data available. Skywatch, a passive radar tracking platform that will be made available to people in an affordable box that they can put in their living room with an antenna on their roof. And all of that data will come together to track anomalous craft, movements, and acceleration, demonstrating one of the 5 variables, which is rapid acceleration, the 5 observables of UAP. And another, Skywatcher, different organization, out in the field using both psionic and technological tools to vector these craft in. These craft seem to respond to both modes of call and to respond to that call and to gain real verified evidence of their shape, their mass, their movements, and so forth, and to present those findings to the public. We have these tools. And so all we need to do is fund them, certainly get them the money they need to go to scale up, but also to make a coalition of technology partners to share data and to get real research and analysis done upon that data. That's a passionate project of mine that I'm looking forward to supporting. With everyone working together in this limited field of resource and institutional support, we can deploy those resources intelligently in the field. So maybe we can use one technology platform like Skywatch to understand where the preponderance of UAP activity is, because I doubt it's everywhere all the time equally. I'm pretty sure it's concentrated in certain places at certain times. Well, what if we grab other technology platforms and put them in that place at that time? What if we bring it all together and concentrate limited efforts in intelligent field research? Next, what if we start thinking and talking in the public like the year is 2036? Let's talk like they're here, they're interacting, we don't understand their intent because they have not disclosed their intent, and we need to talk about the potential scenarios at play. Go out there and talk about that. Talk like that. Don't talk tentatively about UAP as a fringe issue. Don't be fringe. Be credible. It helps a lot, actually. And 90% of the people I interact with are willing to interact. Or even if they're not, they're looking at me on the way out of the door like, whoa, there might be something here. I do not want to deal with it, but that guy seems to know something. Be that guy or that gal who knows something. That's citizen disclosure. And then second or next is let's turn to the non-secular institutions and communities of the world, the religious communities. They need to be engaged and pre-prepared for what disclosure will be. If disclosure will be that an extraterrestrial entity survived the Roswell crash and conferred or provided direct information that led to the formulation of direct energy weapons, okay, we're talking within those parameters now, if that's the case. And so religious communities need to be engaged, not to think of this as angels and demons, right? Or as ancient aliens that created their religion and their God, and thus will collapse their entire belief structure. Who does that? Again, who benefits from that perception? Question, I'll be asking that every show from now on, 5 times a show. No, we need to engage them in thinking about extraterrestrial biological life. Okay, astrobiology has been chewing on this for decades. The Vatican Observatory is itself a leading thinker on this. This is not outside their wheelhouse, nor that of other religious faith communities. Why bring interdimensionality, cryptoterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials, time-traveling humans into the mix when there is really not credible information showing that those are the most plausible scenario, and there is credible information showing that an extraterrestrial origin to this phenomenon is a likely scenario? Religions are already tooled up to deal with that question. That's already the terms in which the public is thinking, secular or non-secular. Every time a UAP authority says NHI to the public, the host and the audience thinks alien, and there's a reason. It is the most plausible explanation for what's going on. It makes sense. We understand that there are exoplanets, that there are planets that could give rise to other forms of life. It makes sense. So why transgress the lines of what makes sense to present, again, a divergent approach to uncovering the phenomenon? Again, trying to cover all dimensions, all temporal spaces, all possibilities, when there is a scenario that is probable staring us in the face, and the global public already thinks in those terms. So let's get on board and help in that way. And then last, and this really is what I'll be focusing on over the next 8 weeks, is to articulate intelligent hypotheses regarding the intent of this non-human intelligent force or set of forces in our world. There is a zone of probabilities already there indicated in the evidence that we have. We actually don't need more evidence to begin to bound those probabilities. And if we can't even use the evidence we have, I'm not sure what we'll do with government disclosure, more photos, more videos, more amazing craft depicted digitally. What are we going to do with that in decoding the intent of the phenomenon? So let's use what we have. Let's actually proof of concept demonstrate that we can decode intent using evidence. I think that's an important signal to give to ourselves and also to those who are engaging us and potentially visiting our world. Let's see where we are at. It's 8:40. I'm going to go to questions. So let me head over to Slido here. And put these in the queue. First question. I'm wondering about your thoughts on exotheology. What do you think the impact of other civilizations' cultures would have on our theological beliefs? Great question. I think we need to formulate our own exotheology based on our human values and our human experience here on Earth. I don't think we can adopt an extraterrestrial theology. I don't think well, anybody can adopt whatever they want, but broad communities within the world will not adopt that. So it's non-functional to do so, even though I know that there are purported communications that are trying to adjust or alter that fundamental theological approach we might have to the divine, to human origin, so forth. So I think the clash of cultures is very real here. Their mere presence will upend our theology in certain key ways. They can make statements or claims to any effect that would seriously disrupt human thinking. And so, that is catastrophic even right there, regardless of intent. And so, yes, I think there is a passive hazard to the convergence of civilizations. I don't know if their theology regarding their origins, their purpose in life, their connection to the divine, is something that we could interface with at this point. I do think that there is a universal theological framework that we could land upon that allows for them to be just as central in this universe to a divine plan as we are, that the divine plan exists and operates within the universe just as much as it does here. I think we need to move in that direction theologically ourselves and begin to build a future-proof theological approach to the universe. And if we don't do that, I think we are in a fragile position because anything can be said or done at any time that would upend our human-centric, anthropocentric vision of ourselves in a divine universe. So I feel like there's an exotheological force pushing on us even now. And I know there are people in various religious communities who are already feeling it and trying to re-envision some of the core tenets, not re-envision the core tenets, but possibly outpicture them in ways that are congruent with what might be out there, which is a dense, interactive universe of intelligent life, super different than us. And that we have to engage with them and not allow our religion either to prevent that, to obstruct us even looking at the UAP phenomenon, as reportedly has happened, at least in the halls of government, nor to project that upon NHI and make it a human mission, the equivalent of a white man's burden, to go out there and Christianize these extraterrestrials and to make serious compromises in order to satiate that need to express our religion or our religions in the universe. We have in the human record of interaction between civilizations so many indications of what happens when a religion is attempted to be imposed upon the natives, or when the natives project their native religion upon the visitors. And it's bad outcomes both ways. Okay. We have more questions coming in here. Oh, wow. I need to hit some buttons. There we go. Okay. What is the time frame you see in physical contact? That is, when all populations will know about the human-alien trade possibilities. Well, I don't know about what that trade possibility is that you're referring to, but I'll take it to mean, when would broadly the human species understand that physical contact is underway? Well, it's going to be down the road for sure. I think the evidence is that would convince the global population of that already is here. It's locked away. Would that come out at some point? Would that be necessary to satiate public demand following an initial set of confirmations regarding NHI as being real, NHI is interacting, that abductions have taken place? Okay, at that point, right, you can't stop that ball from rolling down the hill. And so at that point, could evidence be brought forward? I'm talking hard physical proof of alien bodies. Possible. I say don't hold your breath. I don't think, again, who would benefit from that? I struggle to see an actor who would, and therefore I struggle to see it happening, quite frankly. Disclosure might be a slow dawning of awareness, not a light switch. And so it might take generations. Also, I wouldn't underestimate the human will and the obstinacy to not know something that is right in front of you. It happens all the time in our lives. There's something literally right there physically. We literally will not see it until the last minute. That's part of our human nature. And so what is the broad societal appetite to know? I don't know if it's that high. I think we like to imagine it as being high. We all want to know the truth about the universe and what's out there. Yeah? Do you really? Right? I mean, do you really want a 6-foot gray alien or an 8-foot mantid standing in your bedroom, interacting with you telepathically and extracting information from your mind and altering your consciousness permanently? Do you really want that experience? Does the public really want to know that happened to somebody? Probably not. And so, we sweep things under the carpet all the time socially: sexual abuse, addiction, mental health crisis, right? We don't want to know until the last minute. It's uncomfortable. It is the ultimate inconvenient truth. You think climate change is an inconvenient truth? This is on an order of magnitude greater inconvenient, potentially, if you take experiencer accounts seriously, and if you take the signals from former government officials who have had access to the programs on NHI seriously. So I wouldn't underestimate humanity's will to not know. So that's why I would say it's going to be a slow process, which is probably better for humanity anyway. But it has to be fast enough that we can formulate some kind of policy response, at least at the level of a country or a world superpower. I would prefer all countries and all superpowers, a coordinated human response. And so again, attention to the UAP phenomenon allows for awareness, and broad enough awareness allows for action. If attention is never grabbed, awareness never forms. Without enough awareness, humanity will not act. If we do not act at all to the presence of this phenomenon, I think we may find ourselves a different species someday. We may wake up and the original humans, well, it's not us. It's in the history books. Do we want to be steered unknowingly by other forces? Or do we want to be attempting to be in control of our destiny and our expression as a species and the preservation of our species value? Because again, in the hard knock realities of whatever the exopolitical universe is out there, I'm not sure that cares too much about what we would call valuable in the human species. But we have to value it. And so I think that's part of our sovereign process of claiming authority and creating safe and constructive boundaries so that our species develops on its own natural trajectory such that it can interact with other species in the future and have positive outcomes from that. A win-win on both sides. Okay, next question. Do you recommend bringing up this topic with the random people you meet in the course of your life? Absolutely. You should do that. Moving on. Where do you think China is positioned to deal with NHI compared to the USA? What do you think would be the difference in their approach? Interestingly, my mind flashes back to the three-body problem, which I'm not surprised that that's required reading in the intelligence community. I've even heard that there have been private meetings in acting government on that docudrama, I guess it would be called, that series, in the last 12 months as it relates to UAP. So the seriousness regarding that model and that narrative is very real. And in that narrative, again, it depicts a Chinese government contact with hostile NHI in the 1950s. Did that happen? Is that part of what is accurate in that picture? Time will tell. We'll have to see. But, if there's so many things that can be said about how NHI might interact with and integrate with various social and national models. So social models of how society is organized, national governance models, how people are governed effectively, economic models, how resources are extracted from the earth, and how matters of environment and sustainability are dealt with. We have a spectrum of models to present to the exopolitical environment. From what many have reported who have encountered these entities, there is a very hive-like structure to these alien organizations, and a very top-down, hierarchical, non-creative, almost dictatorial operating modality to the way they interact with one another and with us. So, would a more dictatorial country, superpower, one that does not honor or respect or regard human rights the way we do, that allows for abuses to take place that we would prosecute criminally, that extracts resources in ways that are more destructive and more, ignorant to the long-term sustainable goals of humanity? Yeah, I could imagine that. I could imagine NHI picking their partners. I could imagine a rush to pick partners, especially if there are competing NHI. And if there are resistant partners, certain countries or coalitions that are resisting collaboration, then I can see a rush to embed with their adversaries and to launch cold information wars, meaning like non-kinetic, and also more informational and psychological offensive actions against those countries to weaken them, to weaken their ability to oversee the global order, to ensure that certain policies are in place for the human interest, and to maintain the current balance of power. I would not be surprised in a decade if we came to learn that NHI activity and intent played a part in the Cold War, both the freezing up of the Cold War and the thawing of the Cold War. I would not be surprised if conflicts like we see in Europe and East Asia, even right now, are connected in some fashion. I would not be surprised if the alteration of the social fabric of certain countries, the internal fracturing of their populations, like, for example, in this country, comes out as having been connected to this issue. I would not be surprised. Let's see, the questions are flying in. Oh boy. Let's see here. Going back to that question about bringing this up with random people, I didn't mean to glance off that so curtly. It was simply to say, I think you should do that, and you should see what happens. It is part of your exploration and your education. You don't just sit and read the internet and watch Reddit and Twitter and go to work and just make this a closet interest. Oh, you can do that. I'm not saying you can't do that, but it's much more exciting to take that knowledge and insight and test it upon the minds of those who are very green to the topic and see what happens. You will gain insight into how, again, bigger vantage point, how the human species deals with gaining awareness and effectively responding to its contact with the exosystem beyond. That's your real, live battlefield intelligence right there as to how that process takes place. And it's fascinating. I love seeing how people deal with this phenomenon. Okay. What would the rational approach to trade with aliens be when the time comes? What must be the agreements in place to make the trade? Very interesting hypothetical of the future. I would say at the moment, I don't think any transaction for resources should take place. I don't think it's lawful. Um, I don't think it would be done with any proper oversight by the elected government, at least of this country. And if it was undertaken by a rogue actor or a dictatorial regime, I think that would open a point of vulnerability, a point of entry that could potentially not be closed and that would potentially destabilize the world order. And so countries like North Korea, other autocratic nations in Africa, Southeast Asia, I do truly hope that they are not transacting actively with NHI in some fashion. Because that's a wound that may not be able to close very, very easily. And we may not have real insight into what the transaction really is and what the resource really is. Again, there seems to be a biological interest on the part of some reported NHI, and we are biological ourselves. And so, are we part of that resource? That's pretty concerning. So, no, I don't think we're in a place to trade with anything or anyone. I think the international community has a road to walk to develop the treaty level organizations that oversee and manage the interaction, even just the diplomatic interaction, and that would then manage the petitioning of non-human forces for access and for extraction of desired resources from the earth in exchange for certain other things. They've been at this game, I would assume, a lot longer than we would ever imagine, right? So we can think we can sit at that negotiating table and make a good deal for ourselves. I would be concerned. Okay. You could sit at that table and think you're having your own thought. And really the thought you're thinking and the deal you're making and the signature you're signing is being done for you. Because again, the telepathic technology of mind and mind over technology interface that these entities have mean that I don't even think we can sit in the same room and trust our own volition yet. We would need to develop the psychic abilities to defend, to create barrier, to project force, and to neutralize effect, to neutralize incursions into our own thinking in order to even sit at that table. That's the game we're in. And Simon Sinek, understand the game you're in. Most companies fail because they don't. Well, we're going to fail if we don't understand the game we're in. It's this kind of a game. That's my sense. All right. I'm going to take one more question because we're about to hit the hour. Let's see here. Given recent trends, it seems the disclosure of NHIs is being managed gradually and in stages. What are your thoughts on this? My sense, as it stands today, is that we are in a controlled rollout of key information that is potentially acting, in part in good faith, hoping to not destabilize the world and allow people to effectively integrate this reality. I also think there are other factors at play. I think criminal activity has been undertaken. People are trying to cover themselves, their former partners. I think there are companies with skin in the game and they're worried. I think there is a great power struggle over disclosure, and I wouldn't be surprised if the thawing of relations and the freezing of relations, even in the last 2 decades, is connected to that. I'm thinking of Russia and the United States, definitely thinking of the United States and China. I think the rush to acquire these technologies to allow them to enter the public domain to a degree, but in a way that can be effectively managed in the private sector, possibly profited from, is taking place. Um, I think there are various factions at play, and I would imagine some understand the nature of the intent of the phenomenon. Others are more ignorant to that, or have been only exposed to certain aspects of it. Given that government and defense is so compartmentalized, how many people really know, really have a broad understanding that is accurate? Not to say they have all the details. There may not be that many, and they also may not be the ones driving. So the question, is there an adult in the room, is worth asking. There might be a lot of impetuous children who have seen the tech, who have had access to the tech, who know some really amazing stuff, who have access to really exotic information and want to peddle that and control this rollout in a way that prefers their superiority, whether it's career superiority, whether it's protection from criminal liability, whether it's market superiority for their company. Take that all the way up to state actors, right? So I think we're at high risk of entering a very distorted disclosure process due to these competing interests that are at play. I do also sense that there is a good faith effort somewhere within the system to bring humanity into the understanding of what this is. Not really so that everyone just gets to know, like we all kumbaya and hold hands and we look up at the sky together. I don't think it's that. I think it's that it is viewed that society, broadly, citizens, must be willing partners in deciding what must be done about this phenomenon, that it can no longer be managed in secret. When that option, the cover up collapsing under its own weight, I think that is at play, but I don't think it's just because there's too many secrets and too many people who know them and too many people have come out. I think it's also that the cover up holds um, key information about things that have happened in the world in the last 80 years that cannot be remediated without broad societal awareness. I think there's been an attempt to manage them in secret for many decades, and something changed. And I wouldn't be surprised if that something is the NHI itself, is what they have said or expressed, not said, and what they have done and demonstrated. And I think there is a recognition of the various forces at play and the hazard of the situation, and that the government cannot do what the government must do if the citizenry is completely ignorant to the existence of these entities and their historic activity. And I think there is actually a good faith desire to do what must be done. And so I think that that's at play here. But we will have to see. You know, we're still speculating and theorizing and reading the tea leaves, so to speak. And so I don't have all the answers, and nobody really does. So, but I think we can intelligently continue to discern and to decode the meaning of things based on the data that we have, because there is actually quite a lot of it. Now, with that, I want to invite you to my course on decoding NHI intent. We have a slide we can put up about that. The course begins next Wednesday. I have been planning this and having to reschedule it again and again, and I apologize for that. There were multiple challenging factors that forced me to do so against my will. 221 people are already registered for it. You can go to my website, reedsummers.com, and click the link course, and you can register right there. I'm going to be offering 4 live lectures with roughly 20 minutes of Q&A after each. And then the recordings of these will be made almost immediately available on my new platform called Forerunner. Forerunner is for those who are endeavoring onto the frontiers of the phenomenon, out ahead of the current safe and acceptable discourse of UAP, to talk about NHI, motive, intent, and scenarios that might be at play in explaining the interaction that has taken place. So if you want to be a forerunner into that new frontier, head over to my site and register for the course. Forerunner will be announced next Friday. You'll be able to register, log in, make an account, log in, and then you'll be able to begin to access the recordings of the course and engage in a variety of really exciting discussions and interactive sessions that I'll be hosting with the emergent forerunners of this new platform. So I really encourage you to get in on that. It's all free, of course. This is my public service activity, and it's my joy to be able to provide it. With that, I want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to stop and look at the disclosure process with you all. There's so much more to say. I think I will do a short episode basically retracing all of the key events that have led to the present disclosure moment. And I'll put that out for the public to benefit from. And as we go forward, I look forward as well to hosting shows with fascinating guests that I have on deck to discuss key issues with me here on Emergent, and to begin to look more deeply into the possible scenarios at play regarding non-human intelligence, interest, and interaction at various levels of our global society, whether that's our technology, our economy, whether that's our consciousness as a species, our sense of a broad social mind, whether that's our biology and genetics. So we have to begin to ask the questions. How are NHI involving themselves in our affairs? And there are so many domains of human affairs to cover. So I look forward to offering a series of episodes looking at each of those as we go into 2025. So with that, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you at the next episode of Emergent.